Hi, Candice. How are you doing?
Hey, Michelle, I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm super excited about our session today, especially after our introductory video, which was quite a lot to unpack. So yeah, I'm quite keen to get into a few of the things that we sort of touched on in the introductory video, and really keen to get your insights on some of what we discussed.
Me too. And I can't make any promises, but I hope to say SOP a little less in this video.
There we go. Okay, well, that was number one. Let's see how many times it comes up. Today, but I will still be using Guru a lot. But we'll see if we can reduce the number of times we say SOP. So, I think a fantastic place to start with the actual nitty-gritty of what we're looking at, and just linking back to our original or first video, was talking about really unpacking the why behind our actions, and just being so, everything that we do is so entrenched in theory, and there's a lot of technicality to it, and the SOPs are very technical. So it's really just great to sort of unpack it from just like going back to the why. And I think when thinking about the why, I guess the best place to start is the Protea Basics, which really encompasses, if you take what we're trying to achieve in terms of our vision, mission, what we're doing every day, I think going back to that document really just spearheads the entire process. And if we're thinking about that, adhering to the basics, I think that it helps us check a lot of boxes in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. A lot of work went into the Protea Basics. It wasn't just smashed together. A lot of thought went into that. And I always love rereading it and rehearing it.
Yeah, it certainly serves as a great reminder. And I think especially in the busy times and that, we can sometimes forget one or two of them. So it's always a great document to go back to and just sort of realign. And even easier now that it's in Guru, because all you have to do is type in Protea Basics and there it is. So, I think having it on hand so easily should encourage us to sort of be doing a look back every now and then, and in particular gearing up for busy times, especially sort of like a little checkpoint. Am I doing this? Am I making sure my communication is aligned and is appropriate? But I think if we sort of start with just some of the key points in our Protea Basics, and that is naming conventions. And I think it doesn't get more basic than that, because we are so, it really is just 6-part naming convention, and that's it. And that's what we want to see on every single file and on every single email. It's not a difficult concept to convey or to absorb, but it just makes a world of difference.
It really does. I recently had a new client send me some documents, and we really just wanted 2 documents. She sent me about 15 documents, and not one of them was named properly. And so we had to sift through them to find the correct document. And had she just taken the time to name them correctly, not only would she have been easily able to find it, but it would have saved money, because then we wouldn't have had to sift through so many documents trying to find the right one.
Yeah, I think I guess sometimes we take it for granted how easy we have it in terms of what we do, because finding a document should never be, and for the most part isn't, very difficult. But I think when I see an email come through and it's a scan 1, scan 2, and I think
Send us straight to spam.
exactly. I think that's and that kind of filters into what does our, because you said you just were saving money, you could be saving money and also just making everyone's lives easier. And when I think about just the naming conventions, I'm thinking now if we're looking at at a file, it's an Excel document, being the four-part naming convention: client name, file name, date, version control, very important. But what does it matter? And I think, to extend that to emails, we've got the email naming convention as well, where we are identifying the client, what it is, if it's relevant to put in a date, is the date appearing there, is the month appearing there? That just, I mean, if we just take it from the email perspective, if you think about, if you had to look at the triage stats and that, how many thousands of emails fly around, on a monthly basis, just opening your email and being able to quickly identify exactly what's going on there and which client needs your attention just makes the world of difference. I mean, I find oftentimes I'm looking for a very specific payment request, and sure as anything, if I'm typing in the convention into without having to remember what I named the document, just knowing our set convention makes it so much easier to be able to pull up the information. And that's just from my side on stuff that I've prepared if I'm looking for it, just to be on the receiving end of communication that is clearly labeled and easy to discern. Okay, this is this client, this is the week's payment request, or whatever the case may be. It really does go a long way just making people happier. Never mind, it absolutely saves time, but just removing the frustration of having to sift through information that isn't necessary by just adhering to the naming conventions.
Absolutely, and that makes my day a lot easier because I get up early. I get up early to try and clear my triage and attend to anything that is urgent or would help my team get their job done quicker. And so when I wake up, I go straight into my triage and I search my most trickiest client's name. And because everything is either tagged to a timeline or it's in the subject, I can get to those emails quicker and I can assign it to myself, knowing what it is. If it's like a sales tax document that's only due in 2 days' time, I just hit assign and assign it to myself. And if it's a payment request and I know that I have to get it to the client because it's named that way, I know this is what I'm looking for. This is what I have to review now, get it done quickly and send it back. And that really is so helpful when I'm trying to just bash through client work in the morning and make sure that I'm not just applying it to the Portia overhead card. It's going to the client because I can easily find all those client emails and get through them all. And that helps my team too, because then they know, hey, she's replying to that client now. That's what she's focusing on. So I either got to make a run for it or sit here and
now's my gap. Let me disappear. That's exactly what I do as well. I pro tier, the overhead is so minimal in the day. We're talking a minute or two because of the naming conventions, because I'm able to pick up exactly what's going on, have a look, okay, there's 10 emails relating to this client or whatever the case may be, and, tackling it from there. One of the things that I always think about with Carbon and with triage is it is essentially an office space. And I think of that with, using the comments function and adding on a note to a task that's perhaps in progress and things like that. And that's exactly what the naming conventions do in our emails as well, because you've just said if you see payment request, it has to get out today, that somebody's waiting for it. It's a matter of it saves me having to, hi Candice, I've sent you the payment request, could you please take a look at it, and you having to, so it's a whole bunch of communication telling you exactly what you're looking at, which client it relates to, by the descriptor in the name, when it's due. It's just piling on a whole bunch of information. in a concise format that is consistent as well. And I think, that's one of the things I love the most about it, especially for those of us whose memory sometimes fails. Like I say, sometimes I might not remember, I wouldn't remember the file name, but I would definitely know the convention used and be able to backtrack if I was looking for something. So I think, very simple, basic. I mean, those are the most basics out of the pro tier basics that we have, but it has such a far reach in terms of efficiency, in terms of teamwork, just, communication, going back to the pro tier house. It really feeds into that quite a lot.
It does. And, even just the version control, one of my clients changed the way that they want to do the payment request. And so we were on version 3. And I accidentally had version 2 open and version 3, but in my head I knew, like, I was just all over the place. So I was like, wait, stop, the version control. And that was really helpful because I could have ended up just accidentally reviewing the wrong documents. The version control is also, we're very good at that at Protea.
Yes, absolutely agree. I think, that is one of the things, because it's so easy to pick up with a naming convention as soon as you go into Dropbox, especially with those documents that go back and forth, which can happen for various reasons. There's a lot going on. Being able to pick up, where is the latest version? Okay, we made this change. It makes it easier to be able to compare, pinpoint where exactly the change happened, especially if you're looking back and trying to see where did the change come about. So I think I agree with you. I think we are very, very good with that, and it certainly just again makes that sort of spearheads, like, there's all of the communication you need to know, neatly put into this file name or email name. Which comes to the second point when with emails. So we get the subject line right, which is great, but it is also the content of the email that is so important, and how we are presenting that. I think that is one that I continuously strive to get right. It is difficult because email communication is dependent on the audience. It's dependent on the nature of the work that you're conveying. As much as we'd all like a one-sentence email, sometimes that's just not possible. So we need to look at, if that's not possible, how can we still make it user-friendly? Because the purpose of sending an email is to convey a message. We want the recipient to understand what we're saying. And, say that, and it seems like it's obvious and, but normal communication. But sometimes I think we don't think about that. We're thinking about almost like a data dump. I need to get out. Yes. This is in my head. I'm going to dump it into an email. I'm not really thinking about how you're receiving it. I just know I need to get this message into written format, hit send, and off you go.
Exactly. And you're sending it in the story format that you have in your head, which starts at point A and ends at point G, but point G is the answer.
Yeah, I think that is you've hit it's almost like, the way I see it is, when you're communicating over email, I always think of, I'm going to put myself in that person's shoes. I'm going to assume I'm busy. The recipient is very busy. I'm going to assume that they have limited resources in terms of time and how much they can sift through this. And I'm going to assume that we need an answer. What's the quickest way to get an answer and to reach a resolution? Because that is what every bit of communication is. There is a resolution within your communication. So if we are having a friendly catch-up, what we're trying to achieve is see how the other one is doing. When that question is answered, the communication is resolved. And I think about that with emails as well. If we're looking at, and I'm going to pull up a couple of examples now that we have. If we're looking at something like a sales reconciliation, and there's a whole bunch going on there, There's a whole bunch of good things going on there. There's a lot that reconciles, but there is also something that is very wrong, or there is a problem. There's something that doesn't reconcile here. What would I want to communicate to you most urgently? Not writing a dissertation on this was fine and that was fine. You might not even get to the problem at the very bottom. Where's the resolution? How do we get to the resolution quickly? And to get to the resolution quickly, you need to be highlighting upfront what needs attention. I almost think about it like I've got maximum attention for 2 minutes. How can I get the most out of you in those 2 minutes? And for the rest, you can just enjoy some light reading, just as an example, because having the problem at the bottom can either be skipped or you talk the person around in circles, which is what I do on a daily basis with most of the people I speak to. So I know it can be quite frustrating to have to sift through that.
I agree. And everybody's brains are wired differently. So the way that I think about something and the way that you approach something, they are going to be different. So when you're telling the story, we're trying to see it from our perspective and your perspective, but then trying to understand, how did you get here? Instead of, okay, this is the problem and this is how we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's the simple answer, is what is the problem? How do you propose we fix it? Or what do we need to fix it?
And I think, with that, I think I can actually now would be just a good time. Let's just take a look at the example, and you can let me know if you see the screen.
See you. Thank you.
There we go. Okay. Now, for the purposes of the exercise and to illustrate the point, we have 2 emails floating about here, and one being not that great in terms of communication, sent by me, which I can be verbose on a good day, so it makes sense. But this one in particular here is great on the email subject. I can tell before opening it exactly what I'm looking at. But then we get into the meat of the email, and I think, just for me, I don't know how you feel looking at this, Candice, but it does make me want to close my laptop, because there is just a data dump here, and I don't even know, I'm not even starting at the beginning. I'm looking at all sorts of sentences here, trying to scan through and see, okay, where is the issue? Absolutely not the way we want to be communicating. And I know I'm going to ask you how you felt reading it, because you actually went through it to come up with a good example.
So first question is, where are the bullet points? And then, yes, second point is, it took a lot for me to read that, and I did reread it a couple of times and
I realized what I'd done.
Yeah, and it's the key to answering this question is, how do you feel when you open a message like that? It's just first thing in the morning, you want to get your emails cleared, and now you wake up to just a long speech, and there's no paragraphs, there's no bullet point, there's no question. So that is very difficult to read, let alone wake up to and want to answer it quickly.
Yeah.
There is no quick way to answer that.
You're right. There isn't a quick way to answer that. I think you were very kind in how you described that. Like I said, I know after the fact, once I said, I thought I could have maybe made this example a bit shorter, but thank you for going through it for us. Then, this is now on the flip side, taking same contents. We're coming up to totally the same reconciliation. Nothing is different. The same issues persist as they did in the first dissertation, but already you open this and, oh, okay, it's not just a whole bunch going on here. I can already tell just while talking to you now, Understood. We've got issues that need to be resolved. There's a couple of questions there, and there's some information that we need from the client. Very easy to pick apart and get stuck in.
And it also makes it easy for the account manager if they're the ones who have to request the information. It's right there. Copy, paste it, send it. This is what we need from them. So action items help the account manager or the senior a lot.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of helping out whoever is receiving the information, because a lot of the information that we that we are collating in these emails, a lot of it has to be passed along. And that is something that I appreciate, is seeing what, and certainly when I'm typing an email to an account manager, I really try and structure the sentence in a way that it could just be a copy and paste. So just being mindful of the fact that this information is going to somebody else. How can we save time? I know what I need. The client needs to get me this information. How do I just pass this message along through the account manager, instead of the account manager having to assimilate what's going on and put together a question to get the information that we need? So that is absolutely just makes everybody's life a lot easier. And I think also just coming back to, did we get to everything? Because especially in an email where there's lots of information going about, have all of the action items been identified? Do we know exactly what? Because even as the sender, you would still have to go through it and be like, okay, I think we asked for that. Sort of trying to cobble together a bit of information here, when by just using a sensible structure, can we call it that? A sensible structure.
Absolutely.
Bearing in mind everyone's communication is different, but by following key sort of, guidelines, I think we can all communicate like that.
I agree. And sometimes shorter is sweeter. And sometimes a phone call is needed. And that's just where you have to say, I have a lot of findings, and I think a call will be quicker, and that would be helpful. And you don't want to raise alarms, or maybe add 2 points and just say, could we please hop on a call? And the same goes for the email subject. If anybody's having trouble, it really is helpful if you add in their high priority in the subject or urgent matter in the subject. And you don't want to do that all the time, but when you need an answer, always feel welcome to put that in there if you need an answer. Because we all get a lot of emails, we all get a lot of communication. And having that in the subject guarantees a much quicker response.
Yeah, it's definitely going to get attention quickly. I mean, anybody opening that up would see, I would be on the phone immediately. I'd be in a panic. But it really is
But it doesn't need to be a panic, though. That's the thing. It doesn't need to be a panic. It can be, I'm stuck on this inventory recon and I'm trying to put an email to you together, but I'm at a loss. And rather just where it would make more sense to hop on a call instead of the constant back and forth. And I think we've all had those situations where, gosh, talking about this in person would be, or on a phone call, would just be so much easier than trying to put it in an email. I think your email might have been a good one for that.
Yeah.
But where typing in an email is taking you a long time to get your words onto an email, consider just asking for a call.
Agreed. I think that's another key point of communication, is assessing the appropriateness of the communication. And like you say, if you are sometimes I think, if I could just show you my screen very quickly, that's all I need to do. I just need to show you my screen. That's it. It's going to solve, all sorts of problems. But it's keeping that in mind when assessing your communication and asking, Does this make sense? And I think, you know, what we really need to be thinking about when we communicate is, again, back to the why. What are we trying to convey? What is the crux of the exercise? If it is a reconciliation, does it reconcile? If it doesn't reconcile, what is causing the trouble? If it is, I'm looking into something for you, what's preventing me completing it? Well, there's client information outstanding. That's the issue. Am I flagging it and bringing it to your attention? And that's why I say the light reading can come later. Sure, if you want to tell me everything else is fine, drop that at the end. It'll make me feel great. But whatever needs resolution needs to be really high up on the list in terms of how you're collating your email. And even with that, and I think, you know, just thinking of my email that I sent, the dissertation, I think another great tool that, or technique that we should be remembering that just makes life so much easier for everyone is when we are getting an email. Let's say it is review notes. How are we responding to them? Let's say there's 6 review notes in 6 bullet points. Are we hitting reply and doing a few run-on sentences in the body of the email? Because what does that mean for you? That means you need to try and tie back what I've said in this part of the email to what you'd originally asked. It just makes the person trying to resolve the issues, makes their life so much easier if we are responding on those bullet points. My standard email is, hi, please see my notes below. I'm drawing your attention to the fact that I've done something. Go and take a look at the bottom, and addressing line for line, because all that means is I can just open the document, have the email open. Oh, you said it was addressed there? Go and take a look. Instead of the time or, you know, even just lack of understanding that can come about when, has this person actually addressed all of my notes? Where have they addressed all my notes? And trying to tie it back like that.
Absolutely. And part of that is also the time difference. You are 9 hours ahead, so in all likelihood I might get my answers tomorrow, or I might get them next on a Monday. And by seeing my original note, it is incredibly helpful because it takes me right back to what my question was. Because since then I've reviewed other clients, I've seen other things, I've done other work. I might not actually remember, but by seeing my words and the answer to it, I go right back to that, and it's easier for me to just say, matter close, move on.
I think certainly for me and my memory, it's always great. You know, if it's just responding to the question you asked me the other day, I would just acquiesce and say, okay, because there's no ways I would remember. Just having that quick callback, a memory recall, really makes a big difference. And making sure that you know, as the person responding, you've addressed everything and you can, you know, move on. You know, Candice, I think like what we've gone through and what we've discussed being, how do we have the most efficient communication, effective communication? How do we condense our message? How do we link back to what we were originally speaking about? Where's, you know, bringing in candor in our communication? A kind of good segue to pause myself here, because I'll just go on forever. So we thought it would be a really good idea during this video series to not only talk to each other, which is wonderful, but get some insights from the team as well, which is always great to, you know, on a practical level, to see how everyone interprets and implements, you know, the communication, candor, deadlines, whatever the case may be, 24-hour rule, just getting different opinions. So with that said, I think I'm going to stop myself here, and we can hear from Jason, who's going to share his thoughts on communication and candor and what that means to him.
Hey, Protea team. Today I will be chatting a bit about communication and candor and what it means to me. As you might know, candor is one of Protea's key behaviors of success, and I truly believe it is one of the most important ones to help us build relationships, solve problems, and provide feedback in a timely and effective manner. I think we've all come across a situation in our life where we might have encountered a problem or an issue and realized it wouldn't have even been such a big problem or turned into such a big deal if we just communicated it a little bit earlier or in a more effective way. Being still relatively recently married, I've also come to the realization that effective communication can make one's life much simpler. This is also true in the business world, but I truly realized how important it is when I joined Protea. When working in an office environment, it is much easier to communicate as you are generally surrounded by your team. Everyone is normally aware of what the team members are working on, who is available, what is required. And if there's any uncertainty, you can simply just lean over to the desk next to you and ask the question. In a remote working environment like Protea, communication does take more effort to execute effectively. But this is exactly why it should be a top priority every day to communicate effectively. If you don't make the effort to communicate with your team members, this could cause all sorts of confusion and problems. One of the ways I have found to overcome some of these challenges is to have regular check-ins with my team members. This allows the communication channels to be open and provides the opportunity for my team members and I to share ideas or raise concerns on the project. I also try my best to be clear when communicating and set clear expectations. I try to avoid sending messages that are unclear or ambiguous. And how I do that is to take a step back and try and look at my requests or statements from a third party's point of view and think to myself, would an uninformed bystander be able to know what is required? Also, an example of not setting a clear expectation would be if I had to say to my junior, I need a report in the afternoon. Does this mean after 12 or before close of business? This leaves the time open for interpretation. But if I said I need the report by 2 p.m., it makes it clear when the deliverable is required. And if something is unclear or unsure, don't be afraid to ask questions. I know we sometimes don't want to ask a question, as we don't want to come across as being unsure or even might be a bit embarrassed to ask. But I have learned that asking questions actually shows that you care about what you are doing and you care about getting things correct. And people respect that. And then also, have you ever spoken to someone and it just feels like an information overload? And in the end, you're still not sure what the person was actually trying to say. That feeling of there's a lot of talking, but not much said. That is why it is important to be concise when communicating. Providing too much detail can lose the interest of the person you are communicating with. So always focus on providing the key points. And if the person wants any further details, they can always ask you. Or you can ask them, should I provide any further details about this? If you feel that you need to discuss something lengthy over an email, sometimes it is just better to discuss this over a call. So don't be afraid to ask to have a call in these situations. You might also have heard of the saying that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, which means that listening also forms an important part of communication. At Protea, I learned the term active listening, which is a skill of listening with the intent to understand rather than the intent to respond. If we are already formulating responses while the person is communicating, we might miss the intention of the conversation or the message. So we need to listen more carefully. I do know our communication does tend to take a dip when we are busy, but it is so important, especially during these busy times, to place even more emphasis on communication to ensure that things run smoothly. A key part of Candor is also to be open and honest. When we communicate honestly, we show authenticity and integrity, which in turn builds trust and respect. Don't be afraid to speak up when you are struggling or when you have ideas or suggestions. It is best to let your thoughts be known rather than keeping them to yourself. Well done to all of us for exercising this key behavior of candor and communication. But let's all strive to continuously improve on our own communication and ensure that we are better team members and that we build better relationships. Thank you so much for listening.